Hello everyone and welcome back to another Alliance video. So today we're going to be doing something a little bit different again. I like to keep variety on the channel, but what I was going to first mention was the live stream. Now you guys told me that you think it would be good to do on the weekends, and I'm pretty sure the last time that I held one you guys said let's try for 8 p.m. Central. So this Saturday, the 26th at 8 p.m. Central, I'm going to try my best to do a live stream. Don't think my brother's going to be able to join me this time, and I'm not sure about my cousin yet, but I'm going to tell her about it anyways in case she decides that she'd like to join in on the fun again. But if not, just to kind of briefly show you guys what is left, we have that custom booster box, a Yu-Gi-Oh! Premium Gold box, a Zelda TCG box, and some more of those really cool looking top cards. And probably some XY Evolution booster packs as well. But let's get into what we're going to do for this video. So I've never done this before, but we're going to try this. And if you like the way that the video is set up, then you can let me know in the comment section below, and that'll let you be entered into this giveaway for the August mystery box month. And stay tuned to more videos. I'm going to try to make some more videos this week and get them posted for you guys, and try to get some other things planned for the next month. But we're going to do a book review. And I'm just going to kind of lightly go over what I'm going to touch as far as review. Storyline, book title, cover art, detail, character development, dialogue, theme, and conflict. So, what book am I choosing? You're probably going to laugh about this, but I'm choosing a Danielle Steele book, Once in a Lifetime. So, before I even get started, I just want to clarify that I do not really like romance novels, but my aunt had a bunch of them, so I decided that I would read them anyways. Basically for my own amusement, or I'm a writer myself, so I'm kind of learning, things that I feel like would be a good approach to writing and things that would not be a good approach to writing. And I think that in this book, there are some really good aspects, and then there's some aspects that I wasn't too crazy about, so it kind of helped me as a writer. But this one is definitely one of the better romance novels that I've read, but I haven't read like a whole bunch, probably like 5 or something. And I just think that this is one of the better ones that I've read out of all the ones I've read so far. So I'm going to start with the storyline. Just generally, this book is about a mother, Diane Fields, who is a famous author, and in the very beginning you learn that she gets hit by a car, and then she goes into a coma. Well, in the meantime of all this, you've got a bunch of people that are, very close to her, and they don't even know what's going on. And then secondly, you have all these doctors saying that she's in critical mode, or critical condition. I almost said critical mode. But anyway, so then the story progresses and you start taking a leap into her past. So it's almost like you're joining with her through a big set of memories, and you're just reliving the past with her. And she's sitting there pretty much in a coma. So it's a very interesting style, which does kind of bring me to one of the components that I had graded it on. And it looks like I forgot to write that down. But I'm pretty sure that I put style either, I think it was like a 7 out of 10 or 8 out of 10. And the reason why I do that is because it starts out, you get thrown right into the conflict. Bam, she gets hit by a car. So then you're also reliving the past after this, and you meet some of the people that she had conflict or tragic accidents and stuff with. So I don't want to give away too much, but I do want to say that she does survive one tragic event that only leaves her with a son, who later she realizes is deaf. So pretty interesting, and the storyline, in my opinion, was a 7 out of 10. Could have been better, and it could have been worse. So as far as romance goes, it's, like I said, one of the better ones. A lot of the romance novels that I've read, I'd probably give them like a 4 or 5 out of 10, or maybe even lower. The book title, Once in a Lifetime, it fits the story, but to me personally, I don't like the title. So I gave it a 3 out of 10 because it's just not something that catches my attention. It just seems kind of boring and bland. The cover art, I gave a 1 out of 10 before I realized that this little circle thing was here. And even though this is a pretty cool little picture here, I kind of would have liked to have seen that, I think, a little bit bigger in the background, so you could kind of tell exactly what's going on here. I'm pretty sure that's Daphne and her son, but still, it's so hard to like really tell much from that picture. To me personally, it just wasn't what I was looking for in a cover for a book. And the detail, I gave it an 8 out of 10 just because there wasn't anything in this book that I did not understand. And I think that's very important when you are writing a book, that you should understand and you should be able to convey everything that you want the reader to understand. And I didn't ever have questions in my mind about like loopholes in the story where I was wondering, okay, so this doesn't fit, so why, like what's going on here, or why did we go off over here and we're supposed to be here in this moment in time. It didn't really feel like it was jumbled around too much in that aspect. And then one of my favorite things in the novel was character development, because I felt like the characters were really lively. Daphne, of course, was very, very detailed, described, and you felt like if you had went up to this person, you would know who they are. And a lot of the characters, the main characters, were like that, and even some of the like not so main characters still had quite a bit of detail. So again, it just felt more realistic, which brings me to the dialogue, which I gave a 9 out of 10 as well. And it made the story feel more realistic and more relatable too. So with that in mind, the next 2 items were theme and conflict. And I gave those 2 an 8 out of 10, and I think the reason I did that was because we're thrown into the conflict in the beginning, and there's enough conflict in the book that makes you want to continue turning pages and at least reading. So then, the theme, in my opinion, was just like, I think it was just exploring the fact that all of us as humans go through so much in a lifetime that it's kind of crazy. Some people have more conflict than others. Some people experience so much more than others. And it's just interesting as to how that builds you as a person. It makes you more strong and just kind of pulls you through whatever you need to be pulled through. And with all this together, and I did forget one of them, I thought I wrote down everything, that gave me an average rating of 6.7 out of 10 for this particular book. So I thought, and this is one reason why I'm going to say this right now, if you don't want to hear me read a chapter from this book, stop this video now. But I think I'm going to read a little bit of chapter 1 to you guys, just to get like an insert of, kind of like an excerpt of what this book is about. And I'm just gonna let you guys pause and read this yourself, because it's an interesting poem, which I like poetry too, so I might do something like that in the future. But I don't know exactly how far I'm going to go, but we'll see. When it snows on Christmas Eve in New York, there's a kind of raucous silence. Actually, I don't know if that's how you pronounce that. Like bright colors mixed with snow. Looking at Central Park from a window, you can see the snow fall steadily, shrouding all in white. Everything looks so still, so quiet, but down below in the streets there are inevitable sounds of New York, horns bleating, people shouting, the clatter of feet in traffic and excitement, only muffled, somewhat dimmed. And in the last minute fervor of Christmas Eve, there is something more, a kind of wonderful tension waiting to explode in laughter and gifts. People hurrying home with packages stacked high in their arms, carolers singing, the innumerable Santa Claus, tipsy and red-faced, celebrating their last night in the deadly cold, women holding tight to children's hands, admonishing them to be careful not to fall, and then smiling, laughing, everyone in a rush and high spirit in unison for the one night of the year. Merry Christmas! Doormen waving, happy with their Christmas tips. In a day, a week, the excitement will be forgotten and the gifts unwrapped. The liquor drunk, the money spent, but on Christmas Eve, nothing is yet over. It is only just begun. For the children, it was a culmination of months of waiting, for the adults to end of frenzied weeks of parties, shopping, people, gifts, bright hopes of fresh as falling snow, and nostalgic smiles, remembering distant childhoods and long-forgotten loves, a time of memories and hope and love. As the snow fell steadily, the traffic began to thin at last. It was bitter cold, and only a few hardy souls were walking in the snow as it crunched beneath their feet. When I turned to slush earlier that day, had now turned to ice, which slid wickedly beneath the 6 inches of fresh snow. It was treacherous walking, and by 11 o'clock traffic had but ground to a halt. For New York it was unusually silent. Only on occasion horns sounded in the distance, a random voice calling out for a cab. The sound of a dozen people walking the party at 12 East 69th Street rang out like bells in the night. They were laughing, singing. They had a wonderful time. The champagne had been abundant, and there had been buttered rum and mulled wine, a huge Christmas tree, and bowls of popcorn. Everyone had been given small gifts as they left: bottles of perfume, boxes of chocolates, a pretty scarf, a book. The host was a former book reviewer of the New York Times, his wife a celebrated author, their friends an interesting crew from budding writers to concert pianists of repute, great beauties and great minds, all crushed into the huge living room of their town house, with a butler and 2 maids passing hors d'oeuvre and serving drinks. I kind of forgot what that means, but I know that's French. It might be like eggnog or something, because I think over is eggs. It had been planned as their annual Christmas cocktail party, and as always it would go on until 3 or 4. The group that just left before midnight was small, and among them was a tiny blonde woman wearing a large mink hat and a long dark mink coat. Her whole body was enveloped in the rich chocolate fur, her face barely peeking above her collar in the wind as she waved for a last time at her friends and began to walk home. She didn't want to share a taxi with them. She had seen enough people for one evening. She wanted to be alone. For her, Christmas Eve was always a difficult evening. For years she had stayed at home, but not tonight, not this year. This time she had wanted to see friends, and at least for a while. Everyone had been surprised and pleased to see her there. "Nice to see you, Daphne. You're back. Working on a book?" "Just starting one." The big blue eyes with gentle and the delicate sweetness of her face belied her age. "What does that mean? You'll finish it next week?" She was notoriously prolific, but had been working on a movie for the past year. She smiled again, this time with more mirth. She was used to their teasing, a touch of envy, curiosity, respect. She was a woman who inspired all 3. Daphne Fields was intensely private, hard-working, ambitious, determined, visible in literary circles, and yet even when she was present, she wasn't always really there. She always seemed as though she was just one step back, just out of reach, and yet when she looked at you, you could feel her touch your very soul. She seemed to see everything, and yet at the same time, she didn't seem to wish to be seen. She was different than she had been 10 years before. At At 23, she had been gregarious, funny, outrageous, protected, safe, happy. She was quieter now. The laughter of the past only showed now in glimpses in her eyes. Its echo buried somewhere in her soul. Daphne? She turned around quickly at the corner of Madison Avenue as she heard footsteps behind her, muffled by the snow. Yes, Jack? It was Jack Hawkins, the editorial director of her current publishing house. Harbor and Jones, his face red from the cold, his eyes a brilliant blue and watering in the wind. Don't you want to ride? She shook her head and smiled, and it struck him again how tiny she was, buried in a huge mink coat, her black suede gloves, hands holding the collar close. No, but thanks. I really want to walk. I live just down the street. It's late. As always, was he when he saw her, he found himself wanting to take her in his arms. Not that he ever did, but he would have liked to. So would a lot of other men. At 33, she still looked 25 and sometimes 12. Vulnerable, fresh, delicate. But there was something more. There was a loneliness in the woman's eyes which tore at his very soul. No matter how spectacular her smile, how warm her eyes, she was a woman alone, and she shouldn't have been. If life were fair, she wouldn't have been, but she was. It's midnight, Daff. He hesitated before rejoining the others walking slowly west. It's Christmas Eve, Jack, and it's cold as hell. She grinned, her sense of humor leaping to her eyes. I don't think I'll get raped tonight, he said. He smiled. Oh my gosh. He smiled. No, but you could slip and fall on the ice. Aha, and break my arm and not be able to write for months. Is that it? Don't worry, I don't have another deadline till April. For Christ's sake, come on. You can come home with us for a drink. She stood on tiptoe and kissed his cheek as she patted his shoulder with one hand. Go on, I'm fine, but thanks. She waved him off then and turned and walked quickly along the street, burying her chin in her coat, looking neither right nor left, nor glancing at the shop windows or the faces of the few people who walked past her. The wind felt wonderful on her face, and as she made her way home she felt better than she had all night. It had been an exhausting evening. It always was at parties. Alright, I'm going to stop here in a few minutes. Sorry, I know I stumbled there a little bit. Like that, no matter how pleasant they were, how many people she knew, they were always the same. But she had wanted to be there tonight. She didn't want to be alone in her apartment. She didn't want to hold on to the memories this year. Didn't want to. Couldn't stand it anymore. Even now, as her face tingled in the snow, the same memories came back to her, and she walked faster as though to outrun them, as though she ever could. Almost instinctively, she ran to the corner, glanced to see if there was any traffic, saw none, and assumed the light was green, as though if she ran fast enough, if she crossed the street, she could leave the memories behind. But she always took them everywhere with her, especially on Christmas Eve. Running faster across Madison Avenue, she almost lost her footing as she slipped and then regained her balance as her arms flailed wildly. The corner met. She turned rapidly left to cross the street, and this time she didn't look up in time to see the car. A long red station wagon filled with people hurtling through the last of the green light. Her red. There was a shriek from the woman sitting behind the driver. A thump. Another scream from within the car. And a strange sliding noise as the car ground across the ice and stopped at last. For an interminable instant, everything was silence, and then all the car doors opened at once, and half a dozen people rushed outside. There were no voices, no words, no more screams as the driver hurried toward her and then stopped, staring down at the woman lying like a small broken rag doll, cast face down into the snow. Oh my God. Oh my God. He stood there helplessly for a moment and then turned frantically toward the woman standing beside him, a look of terror mixed with fury as though someone had to be blamed for this, anyone but him. For Christ's sake, call the cops. He knelt down beside her. Then afraid to touch her, to move her, yet even more afraid that she was dead. Is she alive? Another man knelt in the snow beside the driver, bourbon still heavy on his breath. I don't know. There were no plumes of ice vapor from her breathing, no movement, no sound, no life. And then suddenly the man who touched her began to cry softly. I killed her, Harry. I killed her." He reached out toward his friend, and the two men hugged in silent agony as they knelt there, as two cabs and an empty bus stopped, and the drivers ran out. What happened? Suddenly all the action, talking, explanations. She ran out in front of the car, never looked up, didn't see her, icy, couldn't stop. Where the hell are the police when you need them? The driver cursed as the snow fell around him, thinking, for no reason he could understand, of the carol they had sung only an hour earlier. Silent night, holy night. And now, this woman in the snow in front of him, dead or dying, and there was no damn cops. I'm gonna stop there. That's where I basically wanted to get to. If you notice, though, pretty much it was spot on, you know, with detail, character development. You didn't really get to see much of the character development, like, right there, but you did get a sense of who at least Daphne was, and that these people that were around her were actually really concerned and everything. But if you like romance novels, I would suggest giving this book at least a read. If you don't, it's not necessarily a bad read, but it's probably not going to be your taste of a novel. But until next time, I hope you guys have a splendid week, and just happy treasure hunting, and hopefully we'll have some other books in the future. Just see how this goes.